Hello, our dear viewers, and welcome back. As we have promised at the beginning of our program today, that we are going to talk about the performance of the Egyptian economy and to what extent the Egyptian and the global economy would be influenced by the results of the elections in the United States, which is taking place today. To what extent that would be reflected on the world economy. To shed more light on that, we are very much delighted to have with us our dear guest in studio, Dr. Zeinab Nawar, lecturer in economics. Good morning, Dr. Zeinab.
Good morning, my dear. Good morning.
Dr. Zeinab, to what extent has the Egyptian economy GDP growth rate risen in the latest period?
Yeah, in the latest period, the expectations about the Egyptian economy was actually very good, and this came out from a lot of reports from the World Bank, from the European Construction Bank, and also from the IMF reports. It was the estimate for GDP growth increased from 2.7% to be 3.5%. And this is very good given the crisis that we still have, because the consequences of COVID-19, we still suffer from it worldwide, of course.
And we are seeing now many European countries are
still doing some sort of restrictions,
lockdowns
and restrictions, and we are hoping that we don't want to reach the stage again of a complete closure and lockdown, because this will have again an effect on our economies, and we don't want recession, we don't want unemployment and all of these type of problems. But the estimates and the what had been said and had been written about the Egyptian economy was very positive, and also it had been mentioned in a lot of reports, and also through a lot of expectation that we are the only country that achieved positive economic growth in Africa and also in the Middle East. And this is very good indicator for us, and also that the credit rating of Egypt, although the crisis that the world is witnessing now, we still have a stable B outlook for the credit rating and for ability to repay the loans. These are very, very good indicators, and that telling that we are going on the right way, and we are dealing very good with the crisis.
Yes. Dr. Zeinab, what are the causes and indicators of the rise in the Egyptian economic growth rate?
The main the indicator that tells us that we are having an increase in economic growth was the GDP growth, which is now our estimate is to be 3.5%. We have sectors that had led this rise in GDP, the construction and also the energy sectors. This is part of the story. The other part of the story, it's the stimulus packages that had been given from the government to different sectors. This also helped a lot to deal with the crisis and to prevent any type of recession to different sectors, or a negative economic effect to even the consumption of the Egyptians. Also, during COVID-19 and afterwards, still now, we are exporting a lot of agricultural products, so there is an increase in the agricultural products to Europe, and this is very good also to add to our growth rate. The work that had been done in the national projects and all the openings of the different projects in wherever, in Sinai, in Cairo, even for we'll talk about Ismailia or Suez, or even for the part of the Upper Egypt. So we have national projects everywhere. So of course this will enhance the performance of the Egyptian economy, because we still have employment to private companies working in these projects, employment and different employees working in different companies. So there is an output for the economy. So we're still working, although we have a crisis, but the Egyptian government was successful in dealing with this crisis.
That would bring me, Dr. Zeinab, to ask about to what extent do you believe that the economic reform program did succeed in helping the economy sustain its good shape, although there were many severe repercussions and challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Of course, the economic reform helped the Egyptian economy, that we have the base. When we talk about freeing or moving into more free market economy, when we talk about of course, that lowering the subsidies in energy and in different sectors and increasing our reserves, this helped us a lot to deal with the crisis, because unfortunately that the government of Egypt had to withdraw part of the reserves for the for getting more products from the world economy, because during the crisis you will know the shortage where and when it will be and in which type of products. So what the government of Egypt had done, that they brought a lot of products, consumable products, just to satisfy the our wants and needs in the Egyptian economy. So this had took part from our reserves. So unless that we have a reform, unless that we have a certain amount of the reserve, which was 45, and then it had been a lesson for a few, and then we took another loan, and then again we kept it to be at 45 billion Egyptian pounds. So it's very important to have this reserve and this amount of reserve, just to keep the ingoing of the economy. So if we didn't have this type of reform, so from where that we would have built all of these national projects, because we still need more resources. So what happened in this reform, that you just lessen the amount of money that you used to give as a subsidy, and to get the difference and put it in different parts of projects, reform of education, reform of health sector, which is very important to deal with the crisis right now.
And moving on to the topic of the day, of course, which is the American presidential elections. To what extent the results of the elections would be reflected on the world economy in general, Dr. Zeinab?
Actually, these elections, it has a lot of reflections, because a lot of estimates started to appear on the ground. Even for the European themselves and the European economy, they started to talk, and for China, and even for us in the Middle East, we started to talk. So it's all expectation whether it will be for our interest that Trump will continue, or Biden may have another or a different agenda. Yes, they have
of views.
Yeah, they have two contradicting points of views, and for each one of them, the agenda, it will have a reflection on the MENA region and also on the U.S. economy and on the worldwide economy.
Yes, indeed.
For Trump, he is the one who has the agenda of, I'm going to talk about what is his ideas and what he's thought about.
Yes, please.
For the political situation, Trump is saying that we need to keep good relations with the Arab countries and with the Gulf countries, and of course with Egypt, and this is a good point about us. For Biden, he has an agenda which is mainly he's saying that I'm going to relieve the tension with Iran. I didn't see a very obvious agenda for, if I talk about politics.
Yes.
But for economics, Biden, he is the one who is saying that we have to achieve economic back to us. What is the meaning of this?
Yes.
That Biden is saying that we need to, that the government need to spend a lot on social services. Biden is saying that we need to increase taxes, because when you increase taxes in any economy, of course you will have the money to put it in social activities and social expenses. Because Biden was the vice president of Obama, so he's still, and he's affected by his agenda and his thought, and also the issue about equality and inequality.
And we have seen Obama going with Biden and supporting him in many rallies in different states as well.
But what you see here in Biden, the issue that Biden is going into a way or a direction that differs than Trump. Trump is supporting more the private sector. They are the complete
opposite.
Yes, the private sector, the work of the private sector, tax cutting. And of course, when you do a tax cut, so you increase the ability of people to buy. So if you think what the reflection of this into Egypt, so if we are asking more investors and U.S. investors to coming into our lands, so if we think about Biden, the one who will think that increasing taxes and also putting more maybe restrictions or some sort of restriction on the private sector, so this will not be in our interest if we are seeking more investors coming into our land.
Yes.
Trump was supporting private sector and supporting investment in the U.S. and outside of the U.S., so this also it comes into our interest, a big part of it. What else we can see? The relation with Europe and China. Europe, it threatened. It happens once that Trump feels that Europe was not dealing with the U.S. properly, And even for the European, they're just afraid that Trump is going to be in again, because they are afraid of, again, maybe a trade war to happen this time between the US and Europe, because Europe exported a lot to the US in the last year, and this is also against the interest of the US. So they also, it had been said that it's all about expectation, that they're just afraid that if Trump came again, so maybe he will continue the war with China, and maybe he will open another war.
That's the point that I was going to ask about, Dr. Zeinab. The trade war between the United States and China, which did occur during the Trump time of ruling the United States of America. Do you expect it to continue if he would be re-elected? Do you expect to see a change which would be reflected on the global economy if Joe Biden did win the polls? How do you see here the situation, which of course is having its impact on the world economy as well?
I see that if Trump came in power again,
yes,
I think he will continue his war with China.
Which is expected.
I will tell you something. The war with China actually achieved a lot of its targets. You will see that the amount of international trade worldwide decreased. This is before coronavirus. Yeah?
Yes,
I'm just talking about COVID-19. If you just do like we call it as economists, like a macroeconomic studies for all of the economies, the amount of trade, the amount of international trade, and even the amount of ships coming into our Egyptian ports. You will see it even from this, that before COVID-19, there was a very aggressive decrease in the amount of international trade because of the war between the US and China.
Yes.
So we can, we can say to a certain extent that this war had actually succeeded partially to stop the growth of China. So it depends on their political agenda.
Yes. So how do you see that is in favor of the U.S. economy and in favor of the world economy, or it's against the world economy from your point of view, if this trade war did continue between the two major economies in the world? It's
against the world economy because it will lessen the amount of international trade and exports and imports worldwide. But it could be, in one case, in favor of the world economy, if the world economy if different countries try to be in as new players in the theme. 60–70% from the raw materials are being manufactured in China.
Yes.
So you mean that even this highlighted by COVID-19. So all or most of the countries in the world depending on one country, which is not the right thing. Even if you talk about before the war between the US and China, it's not right that most of the production is coming from one country.
Indeed, yes.
So what is happening? It's in favor, and it is in favor at the same time.
Yes.
It's in favor because the effects of this war, the lessons of the international trade, a lot of factors that used to export to the US, Chinese exportation to US will be affected. So of course this will affect the standards of living of Chinese people in their countries. However, the world will start to look for other different sources, and we hope that the world to look to Egypt,
yes,
and the MENA region to be partially can get a part from what the China had to produce to the world. Other hubs that they're looking for is in Indonesia and also in India. So other hubs will appear to be in for the international community.
Indeed, Dr. Zeinab would go now to watch this report where America's founding fathers decided that one elected civilians, the U.S. president, would lead the executive branch of the federal government, a government structure that has remained in place for more than 200 years. Since the office was established in 1789, 44 men have served as president. To know more about some of the U.S. former presidents, let's watch this report.
The President of the United States is indirectly elected to a 4-year term by the people through the Electoral College. The office holder leads the executive branch of the federal government and is the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Armed Forces. Since the office was established in 1789, 44 men have served as president. George Washington was a political leader, military general, statesman, and founding father who served as the first President of the United States from 1789 to 1797. Previously, he led Patriot forces to victory in the nation's war for independence. He presided at the Constitutional Convention of 1787, which established the U.S. Constitution and a federal government. Washington has been called the father of his country for his manifold leadership in the formative days of the new nation. Abraham Lincoln was a statesman and lawyer who served as the 16th President of the United States from 1861 to 1865. Lincoln led the nation through the American Civil War, the country's greatest moral, constitutional, and political crisis. He succeeded in preserving the Union, abolishing slavery, bolstering the federal government, and modernizing the U.S. economy. Theodore Roosevelt, often referred to as Teddy Roosevelt or his initials TR, was a statesman, conservationist, naturalist, historian, and writer who served as the 26th President of the United States from 1901 to 1909. He previously served as the 33rd Governor of New York from 1899 to 1900 and the 25th Vice President of the United States from March to September 1901. Roosevelt emerged as a leader of the Republican Party and became a driving force for the antitrust policy while supporting progressive-era policies in the early 20th century. He was the first American to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Dwight D. Eisenhower was a politician and soldier who served as the 34th President of the United States from 1953 to 1961. During World War II, he became a five-star general in the Army who served as Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force in Europe. He started highway system, ended the Korean War with a ceasefire. John F. Kennedy, often referred to by his initials JFK and Jack, was an American politician who served as the 35th President of the United States from January 1961 until his assassination in November 1963. Kennedy served at the height of the Cold War, and the majority of his work as president concerned relations with the Soviet Union and Cuba. A Democrat, Kennedy represented Massachusetts in the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate prior to becoming president. Jimmy Carter is a politician, philanthropist, and former farmer who served as the 39th President of the United States from 1977 to 1981. A member of the Democratic Party, he previously served as a Georgia state senator from 1963 to 1967, and as the 76th governor of Georgia from 1971 to 1975. Since leaving the presidency, Carter has remained engaged in political and social projects as a private citizen. In 2002, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his work in co-founding the Carter Center. George H.W. Bush was a politician, diplomat, and businessman who served as the 41st President of the United States from 1989 to 1993. A member of the Republican Party, Bush also served as the 43rd Vice President from 1981 to 1989 in the U.S. House of Representatives, as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, and as Director of the Central Intelligence. George W. Bush is a politician and businessman who served as the 43rd President of the United States from 2001 to 2009. A member of the Republican Party, he had previously served as the 46th Governor of Texas from 1995 to 2000. His presidency marked by 9/11, War on Terror, the subsequent invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. Barack Obama is a politician and attorney who served as the 44th President of the United States from 2009 to 2017. A member of the Democratic Party, Obama was the first African-American president of the United States.
Welcome back. We continue our interview with Dr. Zeinab Nawar, our lecturer of economics. Dr. Zeinab, to what extent you are seeing a great impact for the elections in the United States on Egypt and its economic performance starting the coming phase?
For the time being, the economic performance, we are still doing well. For the coming phase, if Trump came in power, I would see that maybe we'll have more of foreign investors, U.S. foreign investors coming into our lands.
More than if Biden
Trump,
did
more than Biden, yes,
Yes.
yes, more than Biden. Because Trump is supporting the private sector, giving tax cuts. So this will allow a surplus in terms of the individuals' consumptions and individuals' freedom to move worldwide and to invest worldwide. But if Biden increased taxes for multinationals and for the companies that is working in the U.S., so this will limit their movement outside of the U.S. And of course, if there is more movement and more investors outside of the U.S., so Egypt will be one of the markets that the investors will look at.
Yes.
So it's from, I see it from our interest that Trump to come in power, because we want more investors and we want more innovation coming into our lands.
Yes. What are the pros and cons, Dr. Zeinab, and the consequences of the American election, especially on Egypt and the Middle East region? In both cases, both scenarios, if Trump did win and if Joe Biden did win?
If Trump did win, this also will come into the side of us, because nothing will change in terms of diplomacy and political stance. And of course, political stance has effect on economic stance. So maybe also this will have, it will be something good for us that Trump will still remain in power. What we are going to lose if Trump came in power, because I don't see for myself as economist a political agenda or clear political agenda, except that he's going to leave all his old plans for the Middle East as it is. So this means that for the economic situation, if we got a certain benefit, if there is a certain agreement with the U.S., so everything will remain as it is. So we still maintain the same positive or good things we are getting from the U.S. But if Biden came in power, maybe there will be a change in his agenda, and maybe he would have a different political agenda for the Middle East, and this may also have a certain effects on our economy. One of the good things about Trump is saying that maintaining the good relations between the Arab countries and Israel. And this is a main factor if we like to talk about economic growth and stability and achieving economic reforms and all of this. We cannot do any types of economic growth.
So do you see here that if Trump did win the election, we are going to witness more economic stability in the region?
Yes, in the region, and we will still maintain the more gains, the gains that we used to have. But if Biden came in power, maybe things will change.
We are not sure yet.
Because also Biden has this type of thinking of inside the U.S. He may think more of the U.S. and the problems of the U.S., more money to be spent on healthcare and services, and also drug reform for drugs and all of this type. And also for Biden, he would like to relax the problems and the tension with Iran. So what will be the consequences of things like this if the U.S. is going to relax the problems with Iran on the Middle East? So of course, I see that Trump will be better for us as Egypt.
We have been witnessing many attacks against the current American President Trump concerning how he did handle the COVID-19 pandemic issue. To what extent that was somehow taken in favor of Joe Biden? So do you agree with that, or do you think that still the economy of the United States is doing well, and the way he handled the pandemic and the consequences of the pandemic was good for the American economy?
I'll tell you part of this. It has in two sides.
Yes.
That is related to politics and also what is related to economics.
Yes.
Dealing with the pandemic, most of the government and most of the countries around the world, they didn't deal efficiently with the pandemic, because the pandemic, the losses of the pandemic was greater and larger than anything
unexpected.
And especially for a big economy like the USA, it was a disaster for the economy.
Yeah.
And the linkage also with China. But I will tell you something, yani the trade war that Trump had made, which is, of course, it was in favor of the world economy at the time, but it succeeded partially to achieve some sort of success to the US economy. So for Trump, he's trying to look for the interest of his economy and for his citizens. So maybe for this, he will get a lot of supporters. I mean, we cannot look for the situation from our point of view, because you have to look to the others' point of view. So we still, I'll tell you, we don't know about Biden. And for myself, I don't believe much in this agenda during the elections, because you will not see what actually he's going to do or the effect of his decision unless he will come in power. To tell you so. So all what you are talking about is expectations. And dealing with COVID-19, a lot of countries were not successful in dealing with the COVID-19.
We have to say
there was a delay
most of
in
the countries
decisions.
Were not very efficient.
Delay in decisions. A lot of infections, and it was the inability of hospitals in a lot of countries to deal with the COVID-19.
Yes.
The U.S. And also the biggest number of infected was at the U.S.
Yes.
And a big number of deaths.
That's why
the
Democrats.
It was the largest economy affected actually in terms of infections and the number of deaths after China and after and other countries, and even in the Latin America.
Yes.
So it was a disaster worldwide, and if the country is big like the U.S., so it's normal for the country to have such type of destruction and delayment in taking decisions, and we cannot imagine that a country like the U.S. with this amount of hospitals and healthcare, and they didn't deal with the COVID-19 because of the disaster, which was too much and too big than any country to handle it.
And unexpected. It's unprecedented incident. From your point of view, Dr. Zeinab, do you think that it is economically better for the American citizen to witness the re-election of Donald Trump, or to have Joe Biden as the president for the United States?
It depends on the U.S. citizens themselves and what they see.
Economically.
Economically, I see that Trump. No, economically, if they're looking for their more expenditure on services and social services, it's Biden. Because Biden, in his agenda, he's telling that he will expand more on social services to the U.S. citizens, and this is what he's using.
Yes.
So for those who believe in they want to get more of social services, it's Biden. But for more who believes in private sector and the rule of the U.S. worldwide, and also the rule of the U.S. for trade, and to also prevent their interest from being minimized, so they will think of Trump. So this depends on them.
Indeed. Dr. Zeinab Nawar, our lecturer in economics, thank you very much for your very precious input. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you. Thank you.
Our dear viewers, that will bring us to the end of this segment in The Breakfast Show. A short break, and after that we'll be back, so stay tuned.